So the big question is this: how do you lose all the weight that you want and actually keep it off for the rest of your life, while trying to make sense of all the noise that comes from the weight loss industry? That is the question. And this podcast will give you the answers. G'day guys, and welcome to episode 3 of the Weight Loss Secrets podcast. I'm excited to be able to share another little principle for you today, and hopefully you can take away some little tips and tricks that are going to help you on your weight loss journey as you try and make some big changes to lose all the weight you want and keep it off for the rest of your lives. Now, before I jump in, you may have noticed on the last video, I've tried to improve from my first video, my first podcast. You might have noticed I got a little bit of music at the start, a little bit of music at the end, and we even got a little cover art now as well. So we're going places, look out. But I'll continue to try and make improvements. Unfortunately, I can't improve my face. So what you see is what you get, and my voice is what you see is what you get. So good luck with that. All right, but today I want to talk through personal responsibility. And make no mistake, I would say this is probably the most important part of weight loss. It's not the pills, it's not the potions, it's not the food, it's not even the water, it's nothing. If you can't get your thought process right before you start this game, forget it, you've lost. So you have to take personal responsibility. Now, I'm going to talk all about that, but before we do that, I just want to set the scene. And I want you to think about the types of food that you eat right now. And let's just generally talk about that. So the foods that we eat as a society generally over the last 50 or 100 years. And the reality is this: the food we eat now compared to 50 or even better 100 years ago is crap. It's garbage. It's garbage because we used to, I wasn't living, but 100 years ago you're making your own food, right? So you might have a cow on your property, you might have all your veggie gardens and making your own food. And as it's become more convenient to be able to purchase everything from the supermarket, which I love, by the way, I'm not against that at all. The problem with that is we now find ourselves in a situation where we give charge to somebody else to prepare our food that we're putting in our bodies. That's our fuel. That's what's going to fuel this. That's what's going to fuel our bodies. And if we don't put the right fuel in, it's not going to work. It's like a car. You put diesel fuel into a car that requires unleaded, it's not going to go so well. So we're in this situation now where everything is created by somebody else. Now that's okay to a point, but a lot of that food that's been created to become convenient is full of carbohydrates, full of preservatives, full of added sugars, full of all these different chemicals that most of us will never clue what they are. I don't have a clue what most of them are. A great example of that is butter or margarine. Have this as something that I want you to do when you go to the shop next time. Go to the section where the butter and the margarine reside, obviously in the fridge, and I want you to look on the back of both of those and just count the ingredients that are in the margarine, and you'll be amazed at what is in there, because I guarantee you won't know half of the things that are actually in there. They're not food, they're made in the lab, it's not real, right? So we're putting all of that artificial crap into our bodies. That's not good. That stuff is just not good for us. You're better to spend the extra money, and yeah, it is extra money, on the butter. You're not putting a bunch of chemicals into your body like you are with margarine. It's just one example, right? But we're surrounded by this crazy world of convenience where everything comes in a packet. And generally, if it comes in a packet, for the most part, it's not so good. And so this is where we need to take personal responsibility, right? And that is to do with the choices that we now need to make to get the right food into our bodies. I remember a news report where a lady was trying to sue Kellogg's or some cereal company because they had fed sugar to her children, or they'd hidden sugars in this stuff. Nothing's really hidden. It's all on the box. But she didn't want to take personal responsibility for the fact that she fed that cereal to her kids, whether there's loads of sugar in it or not, and whether it's been spruiked or marketed as a healthy alternative or not, is not relevant. She didn't want to take personal responsibility that she'd been feeding this garbage to her kids. And this is my point. We have to take personal responsibility for where we are at. So right now, I want you to think, if you're overweight because of what you put in your mouth. That's the whole story. There's no other story. That's the story. And so I want you to think, right, how am I going to change this? And how am I going to accept this, first off? Because we like to tell ourselves a different narrative to make ourselves feel better about the situation that we might find ourselves in. And on the second podcast, I spoke a little bit about this, but I want to explore it just a little bit more, and how the problem is with doing that, it takes our personal power away. When we give our personal responsibility away, we actually give our power away to make change and to be in control of where we actually want to be. So for example, I hear a lot of excuses when it comes to why people can't lose weight. And they're convinced in their own mind that these are actually the reasons. They're not. They're irrelevant. Absolutely irrelevant. And some of those examples are, I'm really busy with my kids. I've got a big family. I'm really busy with my kids. I can't lose weight because I work long hours. I feel depressed, or my body hurts, or I even had someone whose husband passed away, and that was the reason why she gained weight. Now, I want to talk about these a little bit. And I want to tell a story about that lady as well. She's an amazing woman, and she's made some massive changes. But I want to start with the first one, which I said, which was, I'm really busy with my kids. I mentioned on the last podcast about a guy named Jeremy. Now, Jeremy is a ripping story, because Jeremy had never been able to lose weight before. And he was 149 kilos when he started on the journey with me. And he got down to 99 kilos, right? And he's still going. And the great thing about Jeremy is this: he had all the excuses under the sun as to why he was overweight. And he tells his story, right? But he talks about how he would go to McDonald's or KFC sometimes twice a day because he's so busy. He had 8 children. 8. That's pretty damn busy if you ask me. 8 children. Then in addition to that, he ran his own bookbinding business. Does great work, by the way. So, hit him up. But, Jeremy ran this bookbinding business in addition to being heavily involved in his church, and he's in musicals, and he's like, this guy is off the chain busy. He's even like a leader of a couple of business groups. Like, he's insanely busy. And then he decided at one point that he would actually finally make this change, and he did. And he changed the way he ate, and he started moving, and the rest is history, right? He lost a heap of weight. But he could sit in that place of the reason why he can't do anything because he's too busy, which is a bullcrap reason. It's not even real. But he was convincing himself, and he'll be the first to admit this, that was why he couldn't lose weight. That was never why he couldn't lose weight. The only reason he couldn't lose weight because he was making poor decisions. So I want you to think about your life right now. Are you letting those excuses get in the way? Or even more so, are you looking at them and going, that's why I can't do it. That's what's stopping me. That's what's holding me back, right? None of that stuff actually is. And looking at it, I want you to think about, am I really taking personal responsibility for where I'm at? Or am I giving that power to someone else? I'm giving the power to my kids. Unless the kids change and are less busy, then I can't do it. It's because of them. Or it's because of work, I work long hours, or it's because my body hurts or I feel depressed, or whatever the reason is. We've got some stupid reason. We all do it, all of us. But the one that I wanted to mention was a lady, amazing lady actually. Her husband died. Her husband died of brain cancer about 18 months ago. And when she called me up on the phone, we had this big discussion about where she was at. Now, she was heavily drinking because of this experience. And so every night she would get quite drunk, would be the best way to describe it. And she spoke to me about how that was a spiral that had happened after losing her husband, which is just horrendous, right? I couldn't even imagine it. But the thing that I love about this lady is that she said, I know now it's my fault and I've got to make changes. And until I own that and go, it's all me, I've got to do this, she couldn't make any change. She couldn't go anywhere. So I want you to think about where you're at right now, right? Are you ready to accept that you are where you are because of what you've put in your mouth? The problem that we've really got as well is people around us tell us nonsense, and they enable us to believe that we are a victim. So you've got people around you that might be saying, oh, it's just because you're getting a little bit older, or it's just because your thyroid, it's because your hormones, it's because you whatever. But they're enabling us to not make changes. And even when you do try to make changes, some of those same people will say to you, you've got to be kind to yourself. You've got to take it easy. Don't push too hard. Whatever it is. The reality is this: we eat too much food, or too much of the wrong food, which we'll talk about in further podcasts. Too much of the wrong food, even if it's healthy food, we're going to gain weight. That's how it works. And we've got to get our calories down. We've got to consume less calories so our body can use our fat stores as an energy source. It doesn't matter whether you are sad, grumpy, depressed, happy, really cheery and friendly and everything's going great. It's completely irrelevant what is happening in your life. Completely irrelevant. And when we allow our life to dictate to us on what we're going to do, then we're never going to win. We live in this world where it's a victim mentality. Not most, but lots of people have this victim mentality where life is being done to them. I'm overweight because of this. I'm overweight because of that. I'm unhealthy because I don't have time. I'm unhealthy because of this, because of that, because of whatever else. Nope. If we're unhealthy, it's because we choose to not get up early in the morning and go for a walk. If we're unhealthy, it's because we choose to eat crappy food because that's easier. If we're unhealthy or overweight because of all these reasons and the choices that we are making. So taking full personal responsibility, even if you don't think it's your fault, I want you to imagine that it is. All of it. Every kilo that you've got on right now, and this might sound really confronting, but that's who I am. Remember I said at the start, if you don't want to be told the truth, don't listen. But even if, I want you to think every single kilo that you put on is your fault. And you may have had kids and you're like, Baron, how dare you? How dare you say that it's my fault when I had 3 kids or 5 kids or whatever? It doesn't matter, because if you blame anybody else, you're never going to make the changes you need to get to where you want to be. So whatever the reason that the weight has come on, which we know that predominantly it's food, I want you to own it and go, it was all me. I did it. It's me. And that's so powerful. It's powerful because now you're in the driver's seat. You did it all. And so now you're going to be the person who gets to make the changes to take it all off. And you're in total control of that. And so I want you to really think about that in your life right now. Remember, fit and healthy people are busy too. You've just got to make that a priority in your life. So if you want to get healthy, if you want to get fit, if you want to lose the weight, you have to take personal responsibility for where you're at. So take stock. Go away from this video and maybe write some more things down. What can I change? What can I do differently? How can I make sure that I own this process? Can't be about anybody else. You can get people to help you on the journey and support you and hold you accountable and keep you on track, but you have to find it within to make sure that you can make the changes that you need to make. But you can only do that if you take total and utter personal responsibility for every decision you've made around your food. You did it and you can change it. And that's what's exciting to me, because then you're in control. It's nothing to do with anybody else. You don't need any pills or potions or a doctor telling you you've got problems and that makes you feel better about yourself. No. Eliminate all of it and just go after it. Find your weight that you want to be and go after it. And I'll help you on that journey as we talk through more of this sort of stuff over the next days and months and years. So I know that you can do it. Stick with it. We'll talk soon.